All right, welcome to our first lecture. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to be answering the question, what is IO psychology? But more specifically, I'd like for you guys by the end of this lecture to understand several different things. First, I'd like you to understand what is the difference between what some people might call a good job and what IO psychologists consider good work. Second, we'll answer the question, how does IO psychology contribute to society? Third, we'll take a good look at the history of biopsychology. Fourth, we'll take a look at the demographics of biopsychologists. And finally, we'll take a look at how culture relates to biopsychology. But first, we'll start off by looking at a couple of questions. Since this is an online class, I'm not going to know the answers to these questions, but hopefully all of you are either currently working or have at least worked at least one job in your lives. If you have, think about this question here. Why is it that you work? Or why is it that you did work? Were you in a crappy job? Were you in a job that is in transition? In other words, are you trying to work towards something else? Many of you are in school. I assume that means that you're getting an education so that you can work in a different job. If so, what are the characteristics that you're looking for? Are you looking for more money? Are you looking for autonomy? Are you looking for a job that allows you to affect the lives of other people in a positive way? Are you looking for prestige? Are you looking for power? What are the things that you are looking for in a job? I have another question for you. If you were to win the lottery, would you still work? Good question. Well, there was a survey that actually looked at this that was conducted by the National Research Council in 1999, and they asked people the question, if you were to get enough money to live as comfortably as you would like for the rest of your life, would you continue to work or would you stop working? How many people do you think answered yes to that question? Well, interestingly enough, 70%, or the majority of people, answered yes, that they would continue to work even if they didn't need the money. I myself consider myself part of that group. But interestingly enough, what this points to is that the large amount of people who answered yes to this question clearly indicates that people work for more than just money. If we were together in a face-to-face class, I would be interested in knowing the answer to questions such as this. So I would want to know whether or not some of you guys have had a great job or are currently working in a great job, whether or not that you've ever had a job that sucked and why, whether or not you have lost a job or whether or not you were anxious that you might lose a job. And I would want to hear about what that felt like. And that's because IO psychologists are concerned with the experience of work. In other words, they're interested in knowing how work makes you feel. This is much more than measuring just productivity. It goes far beyond that. Another question that I have for you is, what are the characteristics of a good job? In other words, if you were hanging out with a friend and they said, man, I've got this killer awesome job, what aspects of their job would make it a killer or awesome job? Well, most people would consider characteristics such as the following to be part of what is considered a good job. Things such as high pay, having a lot of prestige in a job, or having power. Well, there's an individual by the name of Gardner who is an IO psychologist who considers another term much more important in the study of work. And that is the term good work. And Gardner says that good work is work that exhibits a high-level expertise, and it entails regular concern with the implications and applications of an individual's work for the wider world. So that sounds like a heavy definition, but let me give you a few examples. If you've ever seen the movie Freedom Writers, there is a role played by Hilary Swank that clearly illustrates what is meant by the term good work. Hilary Swank in this particular movie plays an inner city teacher working for very little money, no prestige, and in quite poor condition. So it's not what we would consider a good job by most people's definition. However, she has a major impact on some very troubled youth, and her work certainly has ramifications for the greater world around her. So this would be considered what Gardner calls good work. In my own personal experience, my mother's last job would also be described as good work. My mom worked as a janitor in a hospital for her last job. Now, her work would certainly not fit the definition of what most would call a good job. She didn't make good money, she had no power, and definitely no prestige as a janitor. However, my mom had several occasions where she was able to do what Gardner would consider as good work. For example, one night a Korean couple came into the hospital who didn't speak any English, and the wife was in a great deal of pain. The doctors couldn't understand what was going on with her, the nurses, no one could understand what was troubling this woman. But they knew that my mom, who worked at the hospital, spoke Korean, and they brought her in to help translate. And through the translation, my mom was able to help the couple out. She was able to help the doctors, and they were able to figure out what was going on with this particular woman. So she was able to make things a lot easier for that couple. And in that sense, her job really did have implications and applications for the wider world. So this is another good example of good work. Gardner tells us that anyone can transform good work into bad work and vice versa, or bad work into good work. So, in fact, a good example of this is I was watching the news not too long ago, and there was a story about a judge who was abusing his power and his prestige to sexually harass some of his employees. And so this is an example of how someone who has the potential to do good work is now doing bad work. Another term that we see to describe work is what we call compromised work. Essentially, compromised work occurs when you're in a job where you are prevented from doing good work because you're either too busy and essentially have to cut corners, or in today's current economy, maybe you're having to do more than what you were typically asked to do, and you simply can't do good work anymore, or as much good work as you'd like. For example, my own job as a professor is a good example of this. I have what I definitely consider allows me to do good work. I have the opportunity to influence the lives of people around me, namely students, and but I also have a lot of responsibilities. And so unfortunately, I sometimes have to cut corners, and sometimes that means telling students in a pinch that I'm too busy to talk when they might need to talk right away. So what would be the ideal position here, guys? Well, if you think about it, the ideal position would be having a good job, or what society considers is a good job, and one that allows you to do good work too, right? Well, IO psychologists care about what makes good work. Of course, it begs the question, are IO psychologists doing good work? Of course, I'd like to also think that we are. So, we've taken a look at the difference between a good job and good work, and we're going to end our video here, but I will see you in the second part. Talk to you in a minute.